Okay, welcome back. We're talking about alternation, which is a technique for doing an OR operator. So I want GR either A or E, either one will do. I mean, yeah, I could have done that with a character class, but you can see how in this particular case it wouldn't work if it was like Robert or Bob. I mean, I can't really do a character class with dashes to make it come out right, but I could do it this way. Right? In other words, maybe it's Robert, maybe it's Bob. That kind of a thing. Cool. Okay. So let's pretend like this is an email. All right. And I want to find all the major fields in an email. Okay. So, for example, if I had down here, I say about to, I don't know, me at whatever. .com from you at whatever .com and then subject is testing 1 2 3. Okay, so imagine this, and I want to pick out each one of those sections. I want to pick out the to, the from, and the subject. I don't necessarily want to know what's past the colon. I just want to light up just those words. Well, I would use alternation as a technique. Now, I can't use character classes here. That's not going to work. But I could say to, right? That'll work. Or, from, or, subject, and then put a colon. Okay? Kind of cool. And probably I want to do a hat. This guy. Because don't you really, in an email, don't you really expect that the to, the from, and the subject to be, hugging the left margin? Wouldn't you think? Okay, cool. So that's another technique of using alternation. Yeah, that cannot be done with character classes. Okay, so the next thing we need to talk about is case sensitivity. And unfortunately, that is complicated. Yes, there kind of sort of is a way that you can embed in the regular expression that you want certain flags and fields turned on. But quite frankly, that's just not normal, because if you're going to be running this through, C# or Java or Python or C++ or whatever, if you're going to be running this through an application, maybe you have a file finder or something where you can use regular expressions, or again, you're writing an application to find something, then these kinds of things are handled above the regular expression. Okay, I'm just saying. So you kind of sort of could, but I don't think anyone does. It can be done, but it's tedious. And even so, it would be somewhat implementation specific. I mean, like, for example, this guy right here, I think I could just go here and flip a flag, to make it case insensitive. So I just tell this little irregular expression flag. Now he's going to throw it in on the end here, okay? But that doesn't mean that that's always going to be that way. This slash, the part we're talking about is the part between the slashes, okay? The slash is not really part of what I'm teaching you, and the slash GM isn't what I'm necessarily teaching you. I'm just showing you how regular expression works. It just so happens that this one particular implementation has implementation-specific flags that you can throw on the end, but don't assume that's the case everywhere. Okay, so in an application, there's something probably called regex options. And two of the typical ones you use, one is called multi-line. Now, I have multi-line turned on here because I want to be able to use the little hat guy and the $ guy to make it show that this is multiple lines and I'm interested in preserving the lines. Without multi-line turned on, it's going to look at this and say, well, that's just one stream of characters, and I'm just going to ignore all of the carriage returns. And that kind of sort of makes sense. For example, if you had copied and pasted some text into this, and you know how in the old days, textbooks, like if you had a really long word at the end of the line that would hyphenate it and put it on the next line, right? Well, if that was the word you were looking for, if I had the multi-line version on, it wouldn't find it. No way in heck. But if I had the multi-line turned off, it might find it because, okay, you kind of following? All right, so the two options that typically show up is multi-line and case insensitive. And so I'm not going to teach you how to do that because that's going to be implementation specific. If you're writing something in Java, it's going to be something different than the was it is in C++ or whatever. Okay, cool. The next thing we're going to talk about is word boundaries. Now I told you that the dot matches everything to include white space. Okay, so cool. We're going to do word boundaries. So I want to find every word that has, okay, I'll tell you what, let's do this. I'm going to put in what. Okay, and it found it. Cool. But what if I wanted only to find that if that was a word by itself? Okay, in other words, not embedded in something else. A standalone word. Okay, so okay, so I only want that one and I don't want those. How would I do that? Well, the way you do this is the word boundary uses another set of meta characters. Okay, and so this is called a meta sequence rather than a meta character, because a character implies just one thing, like dot and $sign and hat, right? So a meta sequence is the same concept. It's just it takes two characters to do it, so they don't call it a meta character. Okay, what that basically means is slash. There you go. Slash B stands for word boundary. So I want to start at a word and then end at a word. In other words, it has to be a word, separated by something. So now I've told it I wanted basically something that either starts with a word, which is kind of weird, which is this, right? Starts with a word. Apparently the at symbol is not considered. So I want to also end at a word. So the slash B is a way to tell it that I want only the word what, if and only if it is a word by itself and not touching anything else. Okay, now this is the exact opposite of like what the dot would do. Because the dot would say, I'll match anything to include spaces. Okay, now here's a weird one. All right, here's kind of odd. All right, there really isn't any white space right here, right? At the beginning of this line. Isn't that more like the hat guy? Okay. Well, it just so happens that the word boundary guy will honor both the word if it finds it at the beginning of a line or if it finds it at the end of the line. So you don't have to do anything special. Basically, you just say, hey, this is a word, and the machine says, okay, I'll use white spaces to figure out what words are, except for the beginning of the line, which I know there's not going to be any white space, to the left, and at the end of the line, because I know there's not going to be any white space to the right. Cool. It's smart enough to figure that out. Good grief. Hooray. Okay. So if I said I want to find all words that end in com, okay. So I would go here and say, com. There's a word that ends in com. How about words that end in the letter E? How many do I have? Only one, it looks like. Doggone it. Okay. Oh, there's a few. Okay. So words that end in E. Okay. Words that start with A. That would be like that. Okay, you guys getting it? It's not that complicated. So this is really, really analogous to the hat guy for the beginning of a line and the $sign for the end of a line, except now it's words, not lines, words. Okay, so word boundaries. If you want to find a single word, okay, in here, you probably put the word, the slash B before and after if you want to make sure. Because, for example, I'm after R as a word, right? If I go like this, you might say, well, I found it. Then I say, so, yeah, I mean, if you're going to find just the word R, you're going to have to put the slash B in both locations to make it very, very specific. Okay. So The rules here are white space, but I also honor beginning of line, end of line. Cool. All right, the next one is what's called optional items. This is kind of sort of like the alternation thing, but it's just a little bit easier. So for example, instead of switching between E and an A, what we're going to do is something like, what is your favorite color? Okay. And I want to find color, but I don't really know exactly how you spelled it. So I'm going to say color, but then it could be that you spelled it with C-O-L-U-R, like this. So here's how you make it optional, a character that's optional. You go ahead and put the letter in there and use a question mark. Now the question mark goes after the letter that's optional. So this would work if this was British. See how it matches both? Okay, so let's do it again. Let's do favorite. All right, so it'd be kind of sort of the same thing, right? It'd be fave or, and then I want to make the U optional, and then R-I-T-E. Only if you spell it right. Okay, so again, the question mark means that section is optional. And by the way, it's okay to have. Remember when we put things in parentheses when we were doing the other thing? So there's the thing called sub-processing. I don't know, a sub-expression might be a good term. You can kind of combine these things together. So for example, let's say something like this. This is a large email. So I wanted to find out something like that. So what if I went in here and said, I'm going to go ahead and put this as a sub-expression. I'll take very as one, or extremely, and then wrap this guy around and make the entire thing optional, large. Okay, so this would match. This is a very large email. Isn't that pretty cool? So here I've used a sub-expression to put in the things that I want, and then I made them both optional. Isn't that pretty cool? So this will find this is a large email, this is a very large email, this is an extremely large email. It'll match all three of them. Cool? All right. So sub-expressions work with the little optional doodad. Okay. The next thing is called repetition. So I have a character set that I want, and I want to repeat it one or more times. Okay. So for example, let's put in, well, I guess we'll start with, okay. So I want to put in my score on the quiz was a 87. Okay, cool. And I want to find that 87. All right. So here's how I would do this. There's several ways you can do this. One would be using the character range thing like this, right? That'll make sense, right? But I want to find two of them side by side, so to speak. So I want to do this. So this means only find two numbers, but only when they're side by side. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so I'm going to pause the video and we'll pick this thing up again in just a few.